only saying it actually. I would totally do it. So the diagram on the same, if you original where these colors are things.
Yes.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Yeah. I'll share it with you.
Okay. You know, one thing I noticed.
We're live. Okay.
Gateway.
Oh,
Gateway, sorry.
okay. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Trustee Cheney?
Here.
Trustee Lindberg?
Here.
Trustee Foster?
Here?
Trustee McKnight?
Here.
Mayor Newhouse?
Here. We have a number of public hearings on our agenda to start out with. One which is a continuation, and it's a continuation of the public hearing for the comprehensive master plan. And Jen, if you would read the public notice.
Please take notice that the Village Board of the Village of Warwick will hold a public hearing on the village's draft updated comprehensive plan on the 7th day of November 2022 at 7:30 p.m. at Village Hall, 77 Main Street, Warwick, New York. A copy of the draft updated comprehensive plan is on file in the office of the village clerk and is available for inspection by interested persons during village clerk's business hours. And the draft updated comprehensive plan has also been posted on the village's website, villageofwarwick.org. The village board will, at the above stated date, time, and place, hear all persons interested in the draft updated comprehensive plan. Persons may appear in person or by agent. Written comments regarding the draft updated comprehensive plan will be considered, but all such written comments must be received by the village board at or prior to the public hearing.
Very good. Thank you, Jen. Just before we get going and I open it up to the public, I just want to read a note, an email that was sent to us. Village trustees, on behalf of the Warwick Greenbelt Preservation Society, I would like to endorse the following section from your comprehensive plan draft, page 12. Recommended action, work with the town to designate key parcels of open space to be incorporated into a greenbelt around the village. The two municipalities can both benefit by jointly identifying parcels to be included in a greenbelt that could provide scenic vistas, add recreational opportunities, and/or preserve the working landscape. We strongly support this goal and will help make it a reality in any way we can. Thank you, the Warwick Greenbelt Preservation Society. And that came from Christina Thomas. So I just wanted to add that into the record. And also I want to tell everyone, your comments will be taken back to the committee, and we received comments already, some very good, that we'll add to this document, and that's what we plan to do with the document, with the comments we hear tonight. So with that, I'd like to open it up to the public. Please state your name for the record and address the board. Anyone? Okay.
I'll say something. Okay, so,
You have to say your name.
my name is Jane Newman, and I don't live in the village, but a mile and a half of our farm borders in the village, so, or a mile. And so I do feel like we're kind of in the village as well, as close as you can get. So, one thing that a small business or medium-sized business or even a large one should ask when they're successful and they're on the way up, as it were, is how big can we get before we get bad?
Mhm.
So
May I interrupt? How big population-wise or business-wise?
business, population, whatever
Okay.
it contains. So how big should we get can we get before we get bad? And I think it's a good thing to ask about Warwick Village as it is right now. I mean, obviously we're very constrained by the borders, and for that reason I don't think that it's a good idea to annex land. So there's lots of pieces of land which look like they could be put into the village. But the question is, will it strain us? Will it be too much? Nobody's actually demanding more, other than maybe the state and the county. Right? But our village is really unusual and precious and different and really important to the people that live in it. When you ask people to describe, adjectives to describe Warwick, then two adjectives keep coming up. One is rural, obviously, and the other is neighbourly. And by neighbourly, they mean that it's a bigger than just being a neighbour. It's about being helpful, about walking down the street and having people nod and recognise you and being acknowledged, and working together and helping one another. I think we have, I think we have 365 volunteer groups in Warwick. That's like one for every day of the year. I mean, we love to help, to get together and help. We love that, all of us. I think everybody in Warwick has got something that they work on. And we don't want to lose that. And then we come to this NIMBY thing, not in my backyard, or, you know, I'm here now and I don't want it to get any bigger, as it were. I don't let anybody else in, we're fine. But I would say that at some point we should establish how far we're going to go, if at all. We have the whole of the rest of Warwick town, right? And all this area up by the supermarkets that can be developed. But the actual village is so precious. And for most residents, the fact it's surrounded by this sea of green is so important. It's like, we're like a little island. We're like an island in a sea of green. And that means so much about being protected and safe and neighbourly and rural. So I just asked, and also I said this to Michael before, in England, all beautiful villages have just stopped growing. So it's perfectly possible to not add any more housing to an area. And it's protected, those villages, those really beautiful Cotswold villages, without losing anything. People change, people come, people go, pubs change, the bars change, the restaurants change. There are more events maybe, there's a charity event, but then there'll be a bonfire night event or whatever. So that's just my comment. I don't want us to get bigger.
Thank you, Jane.
Thank you.
I thought other people were going to speak, because I was pretty far down the list.
Oh, no, that's just a list, a sign-in list, so.
All right, well, I was still looking for things. I apologize for being late to the party. I actually just finally read this last night, and so that's why I was hoping other people were going to speak so I can get my notes together. But
For the record, Steve, would you just?
yeah, my name is Steve Gross, 71 Colonial Avenue, Warwick, New York. I think, for the record, I'll include some of my resume for the purposes of looking at the comprehensive plan. I have, my undergraduate degree is in planning from Rutgers University. I have, since 1977, worked professionally in the planning and land use advisory field. I've worked for 2 different municipal planning departments in New Jersey. I've worked for 3 different planning firms, one in New Jersey, 2 in New York. And since 1997, I've operated my own firm in the environmental and land use advisory services right here at 71 Colonial Avenue. And I've also served for 5 years, I served in the past for 5 years on the Village Warwick Planning Board. Most recently, I've worked with these people behind me as Vice President of the Warwick Greenbelt Preservation Society. So, with that combined background, I took a look at this, and I basically have comments in 3 areas. So the first one is to support what Christina and Jane have already said. Of course, we totally agree with the conclusion of promoting a green belt around the village. Now, to that end, I find, and I was looking for the other reference in here, that's what I was feverishly flipping through, where it was, but I know in here, there were basically 2 action items. One was to identify properties for a green belt around the village, but there was also reference to annexing additional properties into the village for development. So those two plans of action, those 2 goals, are inherently in conflict with each other. One where we want to have green land around the village, the other where we want to annex the land in and develop it. So what I want to recommend as a suggestion for this to be considered in this document is a proposal to take land that's already in the village on the edge, or especially land that is in the village and goes into the town, lies in both municipalities, as well as land immediately surrounding the village that's vacant, and set up a zone, called a greenbelt zone. And so that any land that would get annexed in could be automatically incorporated into the greenbelt zone. Maybe work with the town in establishing a greenbelt zone on these properties where they lie in the town. But have as a requirement in the greenbelt zone that any development proposal on those properties must include a provision for setting aside land for a corridor to connect to the neighboring properties, to set aside, so they can develop the land.
So like an overlay?
As an overlay, you could do it as an overlay, but basically to have a requirement for anything in the greenbelt zone, maybe not an overlay, because you would want to identify specific properties and have them under this requirement that any development proposal that comes forth on those properties must, if they're going to be part of the greenbelt, set aside a connecting piece of land with adjacent properties to preserve the ability for, because once they're developed, if they're annexed in, they get developed, that opportunity is gone. There's very limited land surrounding the village that can serve either of these 2 purposes, that can serve either as a greenbelt or as land to be annexed in. And they're basically the same properties. So planning ahead, there's that term, planning, instead of waiting for a proposal to come in and say to the developer, hey, how would you feel about doing this? Have it set up in the zone already that it's a requirement that some land be set aside to make this connecting greenbelt piece.
So cluster development on some
Cluster
level.
development, or even if it's not clustered, still set aside the land. But ideally, the best way for the developer to get the full benefit of the credit for the land would be a cluster. But even if it wasn't a cluster, to still set it, if they want to do traditional, still set aside a connecting piece of land with their neighboring properties. So that's my first recommendation. The second one is, I was reading with interest about ideas for artists, studios, living and in their residence and having a studio. And I see that it was proposed for commercial industrial zones. I've always felt, and this hasn't come up just from my reading this is an idea that I've always had in my own head, that on some of the major thoroughfares in the village, like the entranceways and maybe also Forrester, South Street, Grand Street, that there be an allowance for people that, in addition to having a home office, could also have tourist-related retail. So art studio, antique shop, maker's market type business. You know, if they make their own thing in their house and they can have retail, but limited to the major roads and not, so it's not in some smaller neighborhood. But, you know, where, on the roads where you would have tourists coming in that hang a shingle out, you know, for an artist studio, antique shop, or, you know, maker's market type items. And I think that's a way of, first of all, recognizing that the economy, a home-based economy has, you know, that we are living in this era of home-based economies. And secondly, further promoting tourism as the financial basis of this village and town. So that's my second recommendation. My third is based on my own experience and observing things in the village. I also read with interest about, for instance, where was it? I think it might have been on page 12. Yeah. One of the recommended actions were strengthen provisions that buffer residential areas from commercial intrusions. We already have in the current zoning code protections that do that. The problem has been, for both this and for other things in this village, that we fail on the implementation part. So I think that there should be some attention paid to why there's been a failure in the implementation part. One of those, you know, the obvious example to me of where we needed a buffer between a residential area and a commercial intrusion is the 16 Elm project. And in the zoning code currently, there's provisions that instruct the planning board to consider the impact of a proposed commercial use on a neighboring residential use. And in the zoning code, there's a list of prohibited uses. One of those, paragraph J, says, any other use that is of such a nature as to be detrimental to neighboring properties by reason of emission or of odor, noise, or any other factor that is dangerous to the comfort, peace, enjoyment, health of the area or community is prohibited. That was in the zoning code at the time that yesterday's was proposed and was completely ignored by the planning board. So you have in here a recommended action to strengthen provisions that buffer residential areas from commercial intrusions, and yet it was in the zoning code all along. But it was ignored. So the question I think that should be addressed in this planning process is to identify how that happened. How did you have something already in the code that wasn't even considered at the time when this proposal was before the planning board? There are other areas where you have provisions in the existing code that have been ignored or misinterpreted or whatever. Another example was with the Village View development, when they had a proposal at the time, they took advantage of their interpretation of the cluster provision to say, hey, now we can get, what was it, 42 lots instead of, I think it was 24?
Right.
And that's how they interpreted it. Said, hey, look at this. We can take advantage of this to get more units. But really, what the purpose of the clustering provision was to give a benefit, a bonus of additional units in exchange for avoiding environmental constraints. for avoiding wetlands, streams, steep slopes. And at the time, I know because I was asked to review it, I looked and said, they're completely proposing all of these units right on the steep slopes, excessively steep slopes. It was right smack on top of them. So while they were looking at the one provision that said we can get a bonus, they weren't doing the other part, and it wasn't being addressed by the planning board. I didn't stick with the entire review. I don't know how the plans changed after my involvement.
It reverted back. It's
Well, I
still,
know, now it
yeah,
reverted back.
and clustered.
Now I know it reverted back, but it only reverted back now because there was a lawsuit filed. It wasn't because the planning board decided, oh, we were wrong.
There was also a financial piece to it too. So.
Okay,
Excuse me, but I think to Steve's point, those changes, moving away from the steep slopes, moving away from the ravine where the stream corridor was taken into account by the planning board in subsequent negotiations and discussions
Right.
with the applicant, and that was resolved.
right. And I know Jim Patterson told me himself that it was my testimony at the public hearing where I pointed that out, that you said woke us up and made us realize that, you know, but I shouldn't have needed to do that. So why wasn't that caught without a resident pointing it out? So to me, that was a failure. The 16 Elm thing was a failure. And then I'll point out also that with the entire 10-lot subdivision that's across the street from me on Colonial Ave, the planning board had provisions such as they had required that driveways of neighboring houses were to have one point of access. So like two neighboring houses would have one curb cut. And they did that for several of the units along Colonial Ave. Never happened. That was not implemented. That's what the planning board approved. Never implemented. There's a 10-acre piece behind the village portion that's in the town, and the planning board required that there was an easement. It was placed in a very weird way, and I don't agree how it was placed, but they placed an easement for foot access to get to the 10-acre in case it was ever developed for recreational use. And it went through several different properties, which is why I thought it was strange. It should have never gone through multiple properties. But every one of those properties has been allowed to build fences and everything right across that easement, completely blocking it from ever being utilized if it was to be utilized. So there's, here, the point I'm making is that the planning board, when it approved the project, had several different provisions in place that were ignored now, not by the planning board, but by the building department staff. And then the recent one, of course, across the street from me, there was a provision required by the planning board that there be a 25-foot buffer of trees maintained between the house and the neighboring houses that are on Benedict in the town. And the property owner was allowed to clear cut the entire property before he ever had a permit. He never even not even applied for a permit, a building permit, and he was told by building department staff, yeah, you want to clear cut, go clear cut. And, which included the 25-foot buffer of trees that was required by planning board approval to be there. So I can name all these different things on one single subdivision that was lost and not implemented by, so my point is that there's been mistakes by the planning board. There's been mistakes, I'll say also in the zoning board. There's been mistakes by building department staff. And you can have the best document in the world, and you can have this then, with the implementation and changes to the zoning code and whatever. You can have the best zoning code. I think we have a pretty great zoning code right now. But unless it's implemented unless the people that are in the positions of power, either in the boards or in the staff, know what's in there and know how it's supposed to be implemented and know what's been approved in the past and know to implement that. Unless those people are in a position to act correctly, I don't know if it's more training. I don't know what it is. I don't know what the answer is. I have no recommended solution for you. But
Sir, with all due respect, a lot of what you're saying, it's subjective. Some of the stuff I agree with, some of the stuff I don't. That's not the point. If we look at the comprehensive plan, right, we're having a public hearing, do you have any specific suggestions for how to alter that?
about the last point I've been making?
No, about the comprehensive plan.
Oh, I did already. I said about the Greenbelt zone.
I heard that one, yeah.
I said about, possibly allowing home retail in certain areas. But this is my third one, which is that I like what's in this draft comprehensive plan, but I find things are being recommended that are already existing in the code. So the problem is not getting it into the code, it's action, implementation.
Evaluating enforcement related issues.
Yeah, understanding the code and whatever. So everything's well-intentioned in here. But unless there's some aspect to it that addresses the implementation, that real life in the field, practical application, then this doesn't matter.
Well, one of the things that we've discussed too amongst this board is the ability to have work sessions with the planning board and with the ZBA to do just what you're saying, to review things such as this. And the other thing is to also to try to figure out a way to bring the public in at an earlier point so that they can err and see and get a sense of what is happening and have a voice. And so that's that's something we're trying to figure out how do we do that and make sure that a project which is an applicant can not be stymied by that, but also could learn and could create a stronger project through that. So that's something we were doing.
Right, I saw there in there too about trying to make things more applicant-friendly, and one of the things you put in there, which I agree with, is better communication right up front.
Right.
So like, for instance, with the house that was developed across the street from me, the communication should not have been, yeah, you can clear cut. And also, the other problem there was that it required.
Sir, again, you're going to things like, yes, can be clear cut. I wasn't at that ZBA meeting that you were. I read all the minutes.
Yeah.
That wasn't my understanding. So again, I feel like we keep going back to that. Your point's taken. Focus on the implementation that you, if I'm characterizing what you say is accurate, that you believe there are elements already in the code,
Yes.
which are okay, and focus on implementation.
Yeah,
I understand.
okay.
Do you want to summarize?
I think I've covered all the points.
Okay.
And
And-
I don't want to upset Mr. McKnight any further. So, no, I think these are the points that I wanted to make, and.
Sir, I don't think I was upset, but there is a 3-minute time limit, and you were covering a lot of the same stuff. So
First of all, no one mentioned a 3-minute time limit, and I don't think there's enough people that want to speak that it matters.
We're fine.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay. So, thank you. Anyone else would like to speak to the board this evening?
I think, my name's Abby.
Hi, Abby.
Ashley.
Mhm.
I'm at 508 Route 94 North, part of the Sanford family. So for generations, obviously, we have a very vested interest in preserving the village of Warwick and the town included. And I think one of my questions was the infrastructure sustainability in terms of, what, kind of touching upon what Jane was saying, in terms of our infrastructure, how much can we realistically sustain when it comes to you know, our water sources, our land sources, et cetera, and so I would, you know, really like to learn more about that. And then, just a side note, I was watching the video on the last meeting, they were talking about, you know, speeding through the village, especially West Street. I think, speaking on behalf of myself and every single parent I've spoken to, you know, parents would like to see their kids be able to walk to and from school. This has been, you know, a long-held wish and dream that we have a sidewalk and a safe way for our kids to walk to and from school. It gets them exercise, just being able to walk around the village in general and outside the town. A suggestion I was thinking of was if we had more crossing guards along West Street and crosswalks. Crossing guards, which Florida, as you know, Florida, New York does. Cross guards have, you know, they've done all these studies. They really have an impact because it's somebody out there. And they have signs and their eyes watching, and people are less likely to go speeding down West Street if there are crosswalks and crossing guards during different busy hours and school hours. Mary and I would be more than happy to wear day-glow colors with our signs and tell people to stop and slow down. That we would be phenomenal at it.
You would, I believe that,
Drive
knowing both of you.
outside of the village of Warwick to avoid us and how we would be if people raced past children.
So a little history, Abby, that a number of years ago, the school district raised the radius, expanded the radius for walking to school to 2 miles. And so in response to that, we did have crossing guards, but they were mostly focused on Park Avenue School. Children coming and families coming down from Highland Avenue area and also 3rd Street and even along Main Street. But it died out. Eventually, we didn't have as many people as, you know, that started out. It started out with a great gusto, and there was even a kind of a parent walk to school day where everyone, you know, there's a parade of families. And
What was called walking bus or something?
the walking bus, that was another piece, yes. So, but it's always an important thing, and I agree about the crosswalks, and that's something we're looking at on all of our streets. The more crosswalks we have, the more it reads more clearly that people are going to cross the street. It's a pedestrian area, and so just as a mental note, to you know, I should go slower. So we're looking at that on West Street. The one thing, though, you just can't put a crosswalk in. It has to be handicap accessible on both ends. So there's a bit of structure, of work that has to happen, construction of some sort.
But there's no sidewalk that it has to be handicapped accessible for, because there's no sidewalk.
Well, right, if there's no sidewalk, then it's very difficult to put a crosswalk per se, but, you know, we can look at that. But there has to be a corner, it has to have some connection from one to the other. It's unusual to put a crosswalk in the middle of a block. It's really at the end of a block that goes to another end of the block. You know, it's things of that nature that, but we're game. We're looking at everything, and we have a workshop coming up with the New York State DOT and their engineering pool to help us kind of sort this out and help us try to create a town-wide effort, so.
What is the major obstacle for the sidewalks? I mean, what is the?
They're owned by the homeowner.
Yes, so it's it's a liability issue.
Well,
right?
yes, and I mean, it's a liability issue. If you own a sidewalk, then you're responsible for it.
Right.
So if it's in bad condition, then you can get noticed from the building department to fix it. People who do not have sidewalks often don't want a sidewalk because they then have to maintain it and they have a level of liability. So it's when, sadly, at a certain period of time, when new development came in, they did not put sidewalks. And that was definitely a problem now, because it's hard to go back and put a sidewalk where no sidewalk has been. But we're trying to figure that out as well. You know,
Is it
West.
just both sides of the street, or is it just one side.
It could be one or both sides, but in developments during a certain period of time, in the 70s, I think mostly, 60s and 70s, car was king, and sidewalks were not considered as important. And so and any new development now does have sidewalks, and usually on both sides. But they connect to places that have no sidewalks, so that's a problem too, so.
Is there any way around that liability on the homeowner? Because it just, trust me, I saw in this plan that there was a recommendation for sidewalks right where my front lawn is.
Right.
No, I don't want that.
See, there you go.
Everyone can walk across my lawn all they want, I'm
Right.
fine with that.
Right.
But, you know, is there any way around that liability issue? I mean, you have a right of way on my front lawn.
Right.
So why wouldn't, and the village maintains the water lines and the sewer lines, why would there not be the same situation for a sidewalk?
For the village to accept that level of liability on every sidewalk in the village would bankrupt us.
Uh-huh.
Not good.
Yeah.
Yeah, it would, because of the trips and falls and bangs and, and the attorneys that go along with that, so.
But on the other hand, expecting to have a multitude of owners of a single sidewalk and expecting them to all maintain it is a recipe for failure.
Well, that's why our most successful sidewalks are done through community development projects. But,
I mean, people, at least from the standpoint of removing snow and keeping the sidewalks clear, do a very good job of it, generally.
Right.
We don't have a problem there, but, there are some sidewalks in disrepair, and as the mayor said, we look for avenues to find funding to allow us to step in and be able to make those improvements and add sidewalks where sidewalks might be necessary.
Or all the bluestone heaving and, I love the bluestone, but boy, when you see it heaved and broken all over.
Well, I think we've moved to different types of trees that would maybe not eliminate it, but at least reduce the impact of it. And, when we do have a problem, the South Street sidewalk is a good example between First Street and Third Street on the east side. There was a tree there that was a problem when we had the funding that allowed us to make improvements to that sidewalk to the bluestone. And, one of the trees that we kind of figured was going to be a problem continued to be a problem. So the tree had to be removed and the stump ground down and the sidewalk leveled so that it wasn't an issue.
By the way, the crossing guards, were they all adults when that was going on?
yes.
Well, speaking as the former captain of my elementary school safety patrol, I don't understand why you can't have kids' safety patrol.
Well,
But they didn't put you out in the street in traffic, did they?
Oh, God, yes.
I guess,
yeah.
I guess I was back as a kid.
Those were different times.
They were-
I
Yeah, they were
think.
different times, yeah.
Whoa.
Yes.
It was the 60s.
People have shown us children could be traffic calming devices. Anyway, anybody else would like to speak to the board this evening? Yes, sir.
Hello, my fiance and I have lived for at least 10 years in the village of Warwick, between two places. Unfortunately, right now, it's an ecology construction that's beyond our control, which we hope to fix by buying a home that is on a farm property that is not being used right now. I want to keep it in greenery attached to the green project, green all around the area. And basically, I've noticed the whole area here, all of Warwick Township, is as rich in soil and water as any part of the Pine Island is. And basically, I'm thinking, it's amazing, it's comparable to some parts of California, it's so strong. So anybody who doesn't wanna go heavy duty greenery and as much farming as possible, which might be taking far as just in plain nude, and say, well, why don't you work that land as well and keep it in farming permanently, no matter what? And that way, and since industry is so important, according to Alexander Hamilton, how can we put in industry in such a way that blends in with the farm in such a way that farmers see these are helping us keep our town primarily farming. So I may have some industry, say maybe an extra barn or something, where it's invisible, except it looks like a farm with maybe 2 barns. And you keep, and that way, the kids can live in, for a school and learn both ways. The industry and the farmers, they, wherever they want to go, whether they want to, say, for example, you have the farming times. At that time, you do the farming. And then when farming is not being done, you can do industry to help out because the whole area is screaming in desperation. Where do you pay the bills? Our economy is dying nationwide and we need tons of food. And also we need to have the wildlife that's beautiful here. The trees are beautiful. Why can't we combine some wildlife with in such a way that they're protected and the people around are protected as well? So this way you can have, say, some stuff in the farm for wildlife in such a way as separated from food, from human food. This way you protect, you can even turn the whole area into a thing where you have food of 2 different kinds. One is organic, and the other one is something better than organic, where you can have for medical and special athletic purposes, where you want extremely high quality food, because right now we're going to a famine nationwide. They're drying out in the Midwest and West End. We've got tons of place here to work this stuff. I love farming, she does too. And I'm also into technology. How do you design in such a way that everyone has a chance to learn both sets of skills, so no matter where they want to go, they're ready to find jobs, and also can drastically increase the mass of high-paid jobs. They are very productive, not bullshit like in.
Please watch your language, sir. Just, yeah.
Well, like in New York City or in, say, Wall Street or, say, Washington, we have where the jobs pay very well. We don't have to worry about where the money coming from wherever it is. But instead, we love keeping the place basically the way it is. Except you make some slight modifications to allow for the additional stuff, and that's it. And you might even have some extra stuff being mixed with it, so that this way it stays green, it stays farming, and you might have a few other things you might want to add to that to make it even richer.
Okay, thank you. I
Thank
appreciate
you.
that. Thank you.
So, he went off on a little tangent with, we had just learned from one of the officers at the PD who's been very helpful, that entire PD, we've had an ongoing hardship. We learned about something from the sergeants. Sergeant Mullen was a particular, but one of the officers recently clued us in that when we had the first wave of people coming in to Warwick, there was something called, they were promoting preservation and future farmers. So I think he just went on a super tangent.
No, that was okay. We followed. It was
Okay.
good.
My concern, what caught my attention on the bulletin board, was the idea of traffic safety. We drive around a lot in Warwick. We're having it, as I mentioned, an ongoing hardship. and I thought maybe you guys were gonna discuss, and you still might, any traffic issues or, we observe tons of traffic here, the weekends in particular. And, besides having, you know, my conscience was stinging me a little bit about, but, you know, I didn't give you comments before the meeting, so.
No, that's okay.
Keep it brief.
Yes, and your comments now are fine. They reinforce the idea of, you know, traffic calming, things that we have to look at. That's, you know, the comprehensive plan isn't so specific. It gives us a broader stroke, and it describes these things as, these are important pieces that have to be looked at. They're important for the community to become better, stronger, and traffic has been brought up time and time again as an issue. So, but thank you, I appreciate.
And I just want to, a request that for whatever transportation, there's a turn right here around this building, and it says right hand turn only. And we have watched many times where I have done a dog leg, once or not a lot, where I would cross the road and then just make that immediate left. Yeah. But I've seen people come up this road here and just make the left turn.
Right.
So at some point, that won't necessarily be this meeting, but could we have clarification on what maybe the village, what everybody would like for that particular turn? Is it dog leg, is it so termed, a right and a quick left, or left and a quick right?
It's no left turn, period.
It's right turn only.
Right turn only, yeah.
Okay.
So even
You can't do the dog.
you can't do the dog leg.
Legally.
Okay. We've all done
And
it.
every,
But, okay.
So, all right,
Okay.
you might need some more signage for the people who come there and says, well, you know, they come up on the weekend and say, I can do it if I want to.
yeah.
I know. Thank you, I appreciate that.
Thank
Okay.
Isn't the state regulating that no
Yes.
left turn? That's what I thought.
Yes,
You have
yeah.
nothing to do with it.
Well,
Well,
enforcement.
Can't say nothing.
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
as far as, I think, at one point you had a left turn here, and then you had to put it back. To the only right turn only. Yeah.
Well, one of the things which we're working on, and actually one of the other public hearings tonight, is to put metered spots there to actually slow traffic down and not allow people to do a, pass by, which has been very dangerous for pedestrians, so.
Yeah.
What I love are the people that are in the lot, the Dunkin' Donuts lot, and drive out the old entrance
Right.
across the curb.
That will also be mitigated.
That
by
will be
the-
mitigated by
the
parking.
thing that we're talking about.
I have
yeah.
seen that over
Oh, yeah.
and over again.
And 2 trees have been planted there as well in the past, yeah. So we're trying. Anyway, anyone else would like to speak to the board this evening before we close the public hearing?
And for the comp plan.
For the comp plan, yes.
I mean, I think one more thing that I thought was interesting when we were at the land trust meeting, or the land trust dinner, was something that resonated with every single person in that room. Regardless of whatever party they're from, all came together in agreement about the fact that green, open land is food security.
Well, I think that's what Scott was saying,
And
right?
that's what made me think of that.
Yes.
So I know this is the comprehensive plan, I know this is the quote-unquote village, but when it comes to the green open space, I mean, I think that way of thinking is so imperative right now and going forward. It is just so important.
Well, I mean, the town
And,
has been a pioneer in
Yes,
purchase
yes.
of development rights.
I know.
And really the thing that drove that also was what Scott pointed out, was the quality of our earth.
Yes.
We have such an interesting environment because we're in a valley, and so we have, highlands, middle ground, and lowlands, Pine Island, and they're all suited for a different type of farming,
Yeah.
which is pretty extraordinary.
Yeah,
Not every
absolutely.
place has that,
Absolutely,
so,
Absolutely.
yeah.
100%.
Anyway, anyone else before we close the public hearing on the comp plan? Okay. May I have a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Okay. All in All in favor? Have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you, everyone, for,
Thank you.
if you want to, hang out for 2 more.
We have 2 more public hearings.
What are those about? I didn't look at that part. What's the other two on?
Okay,
Sidewalks. I would love to join the sidewalk committee.
okay.
We need to have
we're-
that happen.
You wanna
Only
be
if you wear the
crossing
crossing
guard
Oh,
guard
yeah,
up.
crosswalk,
Right.
I think definitely. We would definitely. People would just,
Okay.
out of town, they would want to go.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Jen, do you want to read the second public hearing? Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Please take notice that the Village Board of the Village of Warwick will hold a public hearing on the 7th day of November, 2022 at 7:30 PM at Village Hall, 77 Main Street, Warwick, New York, 10990, on a proposed local law number 3 of the year 2022, entitled A Local Law to Amend Village Code, Chapter 135, Vehicles and Traffic, to add traffic safety regulations and traffic control devices. The purpose of this local law is to promote the public health, safety, and welfare by amending Village Code, Chapter 135, Vehicles and Traffic, to add traffic safety regulations and traffic control devices. A copy of the proposed local law is on file in the office of the village clerk and is available for inspection by interested persons during village clerk's business hours. And the proposed local law has also been posted on the village's website, villageofwarwick.org. The village board will, at the above date, time, and place, hear all persons interested in the subject matter hereof. Persons may appear in person or by agent. All written communications addressed to the board must be received by the board at or prior to the public hearing.
Okay. So Carly, would you, just for the audience, which is now a camera,
Yeah.
explain how this happened, or, you know, because there's a little bit of history that you are familiar with, the board is familiar with, but I think the public doesn't fully know.
Sure, and there's 2 different dimensions to the proposed modifications. One has to do with pedestrian safety and the other has to do with accessibility and codifying existing accessibility. So the first is out in front of Village Hall, the crosswalk across Main Street. We've identified it to be potentially hazardous for pedestrians there because the roadway on the, which direction is this? Northbound. That's not, southbound. So southbound direction. It appears to be 2 lanes when in fact it's just a single lane. And right in front of Village Hall, you have metered parking that makes it very clear that it's a single lane, but in front of the Dunkin' Donuts, it's not metered parking. So it appears to be double lanes. And so occasionally, a vehicle will be stopped to allow pedestrians to cross, and then someone behind them will go ahead and pass, which has led to multiple incidents where it's put pedestrians at risk. We haven't had an incident as far as I know, but
Close calls.
close calls, and we don't like those at all. So we also have the issue of folks not realizing that they cannot exit the Dunkin' Donuts across the curb. And so having metered parking there will both mitigate the risk that people will believe that it's a double lane when in fact it is not. It will provide a physical barrier as well as a visual barrier there, and then it will also mitigate the risk of people driving across the curb.
Okay.
And then the second piece is we're adding some additional accessible parking at Memorial Park, and we are codifying and improving the existing accessible parking at Memorial Park. So next to the Little League, there's an existing spot that will now be adjusted to be van accessible, whereas prior it was not. We're going to be putting signs up in the large parking lot where there are existing spaces. We'll be adding spaces and delineating actual parking spots at the skating park, and then we'll be putting signs up at the entrance at Warwick Grove.
Very good. That's it in a nutshell.
Yep.
Okay. Board, any comments before? So, can I have a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And then Jen, number 3.
Yes.
Please Please take notice that the Village Board of the Village of Warwick will conduct a public hearing pursuant to 23 CFR 774 at Village Hall, 77 Main Street, Warwick, New York, on the 7th day of November 2022 at 7:30 p.m. on the proposal of the New York State Department of Transportation, New York State DOT, to make improvements to the public sidewalks along Route 17A/94 in the Village of Warwick, to make them compliant with the Americans with Disabilities Act, ADA. Particularly, the Village Board will hear comments on whether the New York State DOT proposal to use approximately 447 square feet of parkland space on Railroad Green for construction of ADA-compliant sidewalks will or will not adversely affect the features or attributes of and public activities conducted on Railroad Green. Copies of the New York State DOT proposal and plans for the sidewalk improvements have been posted on the village's website and are on file in the office of the village clerk for review by the public. The village board will, at the above stated date, time, and place, hear all comments from the public on the proposed sidewalk improvements. Persons may appear in person or by agent. Written comments regarding the proposed sidewalk improvements will be considered, but all such written comments must be received by the village board at or prior to the public hearing.
Okay. I'll just mention, in essence, this is part of a much broader, much larger New York State DOT project, which will be the repaving of Route 94. So it's, and also the rehabbing or redoing of sidewalks along Oakland Avenue. So this is just one piece. They do have to do the work that they have to do, they have to take over that property, small piece of property. So.
Well, 440 some square feet, so it's very minimal, and I think it's in the long run going to enhance the use of Railroad Green Park. So
Sure.
it'll be better accessible for individuals that need that assistance.
It's that front corner, right?
It's the corner of Oakland and Railroad Avenue.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
this
Where-
corner.
Where the flower display is.
Is it disrupting this flower display? Okay, yeah, I didn't think so.
No, nothing will change except that they will be redoing the ADA compliant ramping system. Probably broaden it as more of an apron, so, which would be good. And you know what, it may give us a good model that we can use too if it's done really well, so. Okay. Can I have a motion to close the public hearing?
So, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. May I have a motion to accept the minutes of October 17th, 2022?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And a motion for authorization to pay all approved and audited claims in the amount of $280,898.64.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And under correspondence, we had comments for the continued public hearing on the Village of Warwick's draft updated comprehensive master plan from Rachel Berlin, and also a letter from, and also the letter that I read tonight from the Greenbelt Preservation Committee, and also a letter from Orange County Water Authority regarding the 2022 leak detection program. Barry, do you want to just quickly, we
Yes,
sent
we-
in our application already.
It has been sent in.
Yes.
And basically, the village has 35 miles of water main, which
Really?
is kind of surprising when you think about it. But, you know, there are a lot of streets in this village, and everyone has a water main on it, pretty much. The Orange County Water Authority provides these grants, this funding, approximately every 2 to 3 years, and it allows us to have a company come in that's hired by the Water Authority, and they will go through the entire village water system with leak detection equipment to determine whether there are any locations that need further investigation. Last time it was done, February of 2020, they found one main water line leak, 5 service line leaks, and 12 hydrant leaks. And the 12 hydrant leaks 11 of those were resolved the day they were found. So it just meant kind of closing down the valve in those cases. So it's very helpful. It's by shutting off a leak, it means that we don't have to produce that water that was not being delivered to a customer. So it's a very helpful service that the County Water Authority provides.
Great. Thank you. And also a letter from the Warwick Valley Chamber of Commerce regarding the 4th Annual Warwick Valley Farmers Market Holiday Market on Sunday, December 18th, 2022, from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. at the Kukin Brothers Company parking lot. Proof of insurance has been provided. And before we do privilege of the floor, if you would read the two announcements.
Yes, a couple announcements, sure. Two announcements. The first is a Veterans Day remembrance, which will take place this Thursday, November 10th, from 7 p.m. to 8:30 at the A.W. Buckby Center, 2 Colonial Avenue. Everyone is invited to attend an evening of sharing personal remembrances and firsthand accounts of life in the service, with insight into their personal devotion to liberty and freedom. These brave veterans share intimate stories of life and service and the rights and personal freedoms they defended. The evening will be hosted by Tom Brennan as he interviews World War II veterans Warren and Don McFarland. Questions and audience interaction are encouraged. Reservations are not required. And then the second event is the Veterans Day Parade, which will take place on Friday, November 11th at 11:11 a.m. and it's hosted by Warwick VFW Post 4662. The parade will step off from the corner of Main Street and High Street in the village of Warwick and will proceed down Main Street to Oakland Avenue before turning left onto Railroad Avenue. The procession will turn right off Railroad Avenue onto South Street, left onto Parkway, left onto Park Lane, and will conclude at the Veterans Memorial Park on Forester Avenue. All veterans are welcome to march. Barbecues sponsored by the Warwick Fire Department will be held immediately following the parade at the Excelsior Hose Company Firehouse on Church Street Extension. All who participate in the parade are invited to attend.
Very good. And do you want to just mention about voting tomorrow?
Yes, tomorrow we have an election coming up, and there are a number of places throughout the village and the town where you can vote, but the polls open at 6 a.m. and close at 9 p.m. And that's pretty much it.
That's pretty much it. Well, we'll see. There's a full moon too, so that,
Yes, 5 a.m., right? That's when you're supposed to see the blood moon?
yes.
I
Yeah.
believe.
Okay, privilege of the floor. If you'd like to speak to the board anymore, this is your moment.
For the veterans event, is that open to the public?
But yes, the parade route, you can be anywhere on the parade route, but the actual, it ends at the entrance to Memorial Park, and there will be some observances that will take place there.
Yes. Very good. So we'll move on to motions, and Trustee Cheney, you are first on the block. Oh, excuse me.
You love Warwick, that's why I just mentioned all that stuff. And
Yeah.
I said, well, blossom.
Yeah, well, it's clear that you love it, and we do too. So we're all working together to make it a better, stronger place. So
I'm trying to join that green,
the Greenbelt Preservation
Yes.
Committee, yes, that's a good
we're
idea.
all trying to join it.
Okay, very good. Okay,
Thank you so much.
well, thank you. I appreciate it. We appreciate it. So we're going to move on to our motions now.
All right.
Okay.
Resolution adopting Village of Warwick Local Law Number 3 of 2022, whereas the Village Board has before it a proposed local law entitled "A Local Law to Amend Village Code, Chapter 135, Vehicles and Traffic, to add traffic safety regulations and traffic control devices." And whereas, following due notice, the Village Board held a public hearing on the proposed local law, and whereas the proposed local law constitutes a Type 2 action under seeker, now therefore be it resolved as follows. One, that the village board does hereby adopt the proposed local law, a copy of which is attached here too. Two, that the village clerk is hereby requested and directed to publish, post, and file the same in the office of the Secretary of State in Albany. And three, that the said local law shall be effective upon filing with the Secretary of State.
Okay. Second. It's a roll call vote.
Trustee Cheney?
Yes.
Trustee Foster?
Yes.
Trustee McKnight?
Yes.
Trustee Lindberg?
Yes.
Mayor Newhart?
Yes.
Motion number 2, resolution pursuant to 23 CFR Section 774 determining that the proposed sidewalk improvements at Railroad Green will have only a de minimis impact. Whereas the Village of Warwick owns certain real property located in the Village of Warwick at the northeast quadrant of the intersection of Oakland Avenue, New York State 17A/94, and Railroad Avenue, parcel SBL 211-6-1.21, and whereas the said property is maintained as public parkland known as Railroad Green, and whereas the New York State Department of Transportation is undertaking a sidewalk improvement project in the Village of Warwick to ensure compliance with the Americans with Disabilities Act, and whereas one part of the New York State DOT project is improvement of the sidewalks on Oakland Avenue along the Railroad Green property, and whereas the existing sidewalk along Railroad Green has not been constructed entirely within the New York State NYSDOT's right-of-way boundary, as a result of which, in order to construct the ADA compliant sidewalk improvements, it will be necessary for the NYSDOT to acquire ownership of approximately 447 square feet of Railroad Green alongside the said right-of-way boundary. And whereas under the Code of Federal Regulations, Railroad Green constitutes a Section 4F resource, and therefore under 23 CFR Section 774, alienation of the said 447 square feet of Railroad Green requires a finding by the Village Board that the NYSDOT's proposed use of the property will have a de minimis impact on the use of Railroad Green as parkland. And whereas a public hearing was duly noticed and held upon the proposed alienation of the said 447 square feet of Railroad Green for construction of public sidewalks by the NYSDOT, and whereas the Village Board has considered all information provided by the NYSDOT, the village's own officials and consultants, and all comments made at the public hearing. Now therefore, the Village Board hereby makes the following findings and determination. 1. The 447 square feet of Railroad Green proposed to be deeded to the NYSDOT for purposes of the NYSDOT Sidewalk Improvement Project is currently used principally as public pedestrian right-of-way on or immediately alongside the existing sidewalk. 2. The sidewalk improvements proposed for the 447 square feet of Railroad Green proposed to be deeded to the NYSDOT will not adversely affect, impair, or diminish the activities, features, or attributes of Railroad Green as parkland space, and in fact will improve the accessibility of the parkland space. 3. The project goal of ADA compliance cannot be met without making the proposed sidewalk improvements on the Railroad Green parkland property, and there is no feasible and prudent avoidance alternative available. And 4. Based on the foregoing, the Village Board finds that the proposed use of the said property will have a de minimis impact as defined in 23 CFR Section 774.17 on Railroad Green.
Second.
You got your work out, Barry.
He's got more to go.
Yeah, I know, but those were the, so that again is a roll call vote.
Trustee Cheney?
Yes.
Trustee Foster?
Yes.
Trustee McKnight?
Yes.
Trustee Lindberg?
Yes.
Mayor Newhart?
Yes.
Number 3, motion to authorize payment number 2 to TAM Enterprises, Inc. in the amount of $5,201.25 for the improvements to the Robert Drive Valve Vault for work including the acquisition of piping and valves as certified by Village Engineer David Getz of Engineering and Surveying Properties. Funds are appropriated in Budget Code F.8340.4 in the 22-23 budget.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion to authorize payment number 1 to Skyward Electric Company in the amount of $52,004.25 for the Hilltop Pump Station generator installation for work that includes all mobilization, the cost of the generator and transfer switch, and the majority of the labor as certified by Village Electrical Engineer Matthew Blake of Blake Engineering, PLLC. Funds are appropriated in Budget Code F.8320.2 in the 2022-23 budget.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Trustee Foster.
Motion to appoint John Johansson as Village of Warwick Summer Concert Coordinator.
Second.
I just want to make also a comment. John came to us immediately once he realized that there was this vacancy, and he's a musician, and he's very excited about taking the baton, so to speak, from Bill Iorato. But I also received another request, and I believe that, and that's from Michael Gerbich, who's Nora Gerbich's husband from the Historical Society, and Michael has a great background in sound, and so I'm hoping that they will work together. But I think we'll do one at a time. But we're going to all meet, and so at the second meeting or at the next meeting, we probably will bring Michael in under the fold, So
That's
so,
great.
yeah.
It seems like a lot of work, and it
Having
seems
two
like
people,
having
yeah.
It's shared.
Yeah, and with
Yeah.
vacations and things of that nature, I think that could work out much.
Great. That's great.
Okay, so we have a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Did we have a second?
Yes,
Yes.
I did.
Oh, okay. Motion to grant permission to the Warwick Valley Chamber of Commerce to hold a Home for the Holidays event and to allow the traditional horse and buggy rides to take place by the same fully insured company, Dun Dreaming Farms Shangiri, as previous years during the holidays in the Village of Warwick. The rides will be offered during the following dates: November 20th, December 3rd, December 4th, December 10th, 11th, 17th, and 18th, 2022. The times for the rides will be approximately 11 a.m. to 4 p.m. The route will be the same as past years, starting on Railroad Avenue and continuing to Main Street, then on to South Street, ending back at Railroad Avenue. Completed park permit, security deposit, and proof of insurance have been received.
Very good.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion to approve the implementation of free parking for the period of November 21st, 2022 through January 1st, 2023, per the request of the Warwick Valley Chamber of Commerce, and to grant permission to the Warwick Valley High School FFA to hang ribbons on the meters on November 18th, 2022, in coordination with the Village of Warwick DPW. Proof of insurance has been received from the Warwick Valley Central School District.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Motion to grant permission to the Warwick Valley Chamber of Commerce to have Santa visit the sleigh on Railroad Green on Sunday, December 11th, 2022, between the hours of 12 p.m. and 2 p.m. The Village of Warwick DPW to install the sleigh on Railroad Green. Completed park permit, security deposit, and proof of insurance have been received.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion to grant permission to the Warwick Valley Chamber of Commerce to have nonprofit groups, including Warwick Valley Central School District organizations, sell items such as hot chocolate, warm cider, and snacks on Railroad Green on the following dates: December 3rd, 4th, 10th, 11th, 17th, and 18th, 2022, during the Home for the Holidays events. Completed park permit, security deposit, proof of insurance, including insurance from the Warwick Valley Central School District, have been received, pending proper insurance requirements from any additional nonprofit groups that participate in this event.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 And Bill?
Make a resolution for the unpaid Village of Warwick for year 2022-2023 tax collection. Whereas according to real property tax law, section 1436, on or before November 1st, the tax collecting officer must deliver an account of unpaid taxes to the Board of Trustees. And whereas attached is an account describing each parcel of real property upon which taxes are unpaid, the person or persons in whose name the property is assessed, and the amount of unpaid tax totaling $46,485.50
for year 2022, 2023. Oh, fiscal year 2022, 2023, Village of Warwick tax collection. And whereas the Village Board of Trustees has compared the village's clerk's account of fiscal year 2022, 2023 unpaid taxes with the original for fiscal 2022, 2023 tax roll and has determined that the amount is accurate. And whereas each member of the village board shall execute the attached certificate which recites that the account and the tax roll have been compared and found to be correct, and that the total amount of taxes unpaid for fiscal year 2022, 2023 is $46,485.50. And whereas the signed certificate and the account describing each parcel of real property upon which taxes are unpaid, the person or persons in whose name the property is assessed, and the amount of unpaid tax totaling $46,485.50 for fiscal year 2022, 2023 Village of Warwick tax collection will be returned to the Orange County Commissioner of Finance office prior to November 15th in the year at which the levy is made. And whereas these facts must also be included in the unofficial minutes of the Village of Warwick, and whereas within 15 days of tax collecting officer delivering an account of the unpaid taxes to the Board of Trustees, the board must file the tax roll and warrant in the office of the village clerk. A copy of the tax roll must be permanently retained as public record.
Second.
Okay.
Trustee Cheney?
Yes.
Trustee Foster?
Yes.
Trustee McKnight?
Yes.
Trustee Lindberg?
Yes.
Mayor Newman?
Yes.
Make a motion to advertise for the position of part-time court clerk.
Second.
Okay. All in
Second.
favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Make a motion to grant permission to the Village of Warwick Treasurer Sadie Becker to carry over 4 vacation days.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Make a motion to hire Hilton, how do you pronounce that?
Dionette.
Rodriguez to the position of part-time court attendant with a start date of November 16th, 2022, as per the village justice's recommendation.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Make a resolution of revising Village Employee Handbook, Section 4.5 Vehicle Use Policy, and Section 4.7 Telephone and Cell Phone Usage. Whereas it is appropriate for the village board to periodically review and revise the employee handbook of the Village of Warwick to update the policies and procedures set forth therein in order to better serve the needs of the village, its employees, and the community. And whereas the village board has before it a proposal to make certain revisions to the employee handbook, and whereas the village board has reviewed and considered the said revisions and finds them to be necessary and proper at this time. Now therefore be it resolved as follows. Number 1, the Section 4.5 Vehicle Use Policy of the Employee Handbook of the Village of Warwick is hereby amended as follows. I, under subsection Terms and Conditions of Use, item F in parentheses to read as follows. A, under New York State law, you cannot use a handheld mobile telephone or portable electronic device while you drive. Illegal activity includes holding a portable electronic device, talking on a handheld mobile telephone, composing, sending, reading, accessing, browsing, transmitting, saving, or retrieving electronic data such as email, text messages, or web pages, viewing, taking or transmitting images, and playing games. Calling 911 to contact medical, fire, or police personnel about an emergency is the only exception. Double I, under subsection Terms and Conditions of Use, item M in parentheses to read as follows. A, New York State requires all passengers to buckle up regardless of where they sit in the vehicle, including drivers and passengers. Number 2, the Section 4.7 Telephone and Cell Phone Usage of the Employee Handbook of the Village of Warwick is removed and replaced with telephone/personal cell phone and village-owned cell phone usage, a copy of which is attached hereto. Number 3, that the aforesaid revision to the Employee Handbook shall be effective November 7th, 2022.
Very good. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay.
Trustee Cheney?
Yes.
Trustee Foster?
Yes.
Trustee McKnight?
Yes.
Trustee Lindberg?
Yes.
Mayor Newhart?
Yes. Tom, how'd you get off so easy?
You got one, you guys got one right here?
I got
Well,
one.
he's gonna take 16 too, right?
Yeah, we'll give you the
Of course.
addendum.
Motion to return the Village of Warwick zoning board escrow balance of $125 to Mr. and Mrs. Proul for an area variance at 149 South Street Extension. All invoices have been paid as per Village of Warwick zoning board attorney Robert Fink.
Okay.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And then,
Motion to enter into agreement with Martin Rogers, PE Consulting Engineer, to assist the Village of Warwick Building Inspector in the review of building plans, particularly for more complex developments such as large residential projects on an as-needed basis, and authorize the mayor to sign the same.
Second.
I have some
yes,
questions.
okay.
So I was hoping that Steve Gabbo was gonna be here tonight, but,
The second meeting of the month.
oh, okay. So my first question is on page 3. It talks about insurance, and it says that the consultant will not be required to carry liability insurance, and that the village also will have no obligation to carry him as an additional insured, and is not obligated to defend or indemnify him for any claims or lawsuits arising from the provision of services under this agreement. And so, I don't know whether we can actually talk about that or not, or
Well,
if that's already been
it's
covered.
been vetted by Steve.
Yeah,
Steve
and,
did.
and the issue here is that it's different from a typical design contract where you could have liability. He's just reviewing somebody else's plans and pointing out where there might be deficiencies relative to the code. So Steve, and I believe we also vetted it with our insurance carrier,
Right.
that they felt that the risk on the part of the village by not requiring him to have his own professional liability insurance was pretty minimal.
Okay. And I just had one more question, because it says that he can charge for travel, and I was just wondering where he's coming from.
Monroe, I believe, is where he's located.
It seems, I just thought that was kind of like charging to drive to the meeting with us.
That's a consultant.
Yeah,
I know.
That's what they do.
I'm a consultant as well.
and I lived that life
Generally
myself,
don't
so.
charge my clients
Yeah.
for going to the
Peter never did.
traveling. Yeah.
But, and again, there's not a lot of likelihood that he will be traveling here for meetings. You know, he's going to make comments, the comments are gonna be given to Boris, Boris will deal with the applicant and provide those comments to the applicant. I think, you know, everything's probably gonna be done by phone and email.
Okay.
So it's up to the building inspector to determine if he needs the help of a consultant?
Yes, and generally, it's going to be for large projects, like, one of the projects is the apartments, you know, multi-residential type building and commercial.
Right.
Where, you know, Boris really, you know, it's a step above a typical residential, single family or two family. And the fees for those are based on the estimated cost of construction, which are considerable and should in all cases cover, you know, not only this consultant's time, but also, you know, Boris's time in doing inspections.
What about our part-time building inspector? Like, could that
He-
person be used for?
He probably,
assigned to this?
at this point, doesn't have skills that are in advance of Boris's, so.
Right, he's doing a lot of training, but he's not there yet.
And he's
Oh, so these are
mostly start out
specialty
with-
skills pertaining to the
This is
larger
for
scale
large
development.
complex
Yeah.
projects.
Yeah, building
I
code
understand
for
now, thank you.
larger complexes.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, we have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, final comments from the board? Anything?
I wanted to talk about the traffic safety meeting, just to kind of
Okay.
brief folks on the conversation I had with DOT.
That'd be great.
So I know the mayor has been talking with folks with DOT about the meeting, and it looks like there's going to be like 9 different attendees from DOT, which is great.
I just, it's just that when I spoke to them, it was earlier on, there was nothing that was telling that was, this mushroom cloud of consultants was going to appear. But it's good, I agree.
Yeah, and so I had been working on contacting the contacts that Raina and the mayor had been speaking with about the agenda, and had indicated that I believe that it would be great if we could talk about best practices for traffic calming and in general, both permanent and temporary, technical support that New York State DOT might be able to provide us, options that we might consider to help address issues around speeding, specifically on our gateway roadways, like South Street Extension, West Street, Galloway, Maple, and Forester, even though that's not a gateway, it is a road connecting gateways, and next steps related to potential projects and funding. So I did speak with a representative who indicated that it would be unlikely, they would not really want to talk about any village roadways other than state-owned roadways, and so that we should limit the conversation to the 2 state-owned roadways, or 3, and then that we should seek elsewhere for technical support.
What's that mean?
Hire a consultant.
Yeah.
And also they referenced the Orange County Transportation Coalition.
Transportation.
Yeah. So, but I did get so that was, it was not my favorite conversation. But I did indicate that I thought we should still have the conversation, that we wanted to partner with them on these speeding solutions. I did ask what data they thought we should bring to kind of facilitate the conversation. They said that we don't need any data, that they believe that there are likely speeding problems and pedestrian safety issues on their roadways. So that was good, and then, that we would have this conversation. I did subsequently receive an email from a different representative at DOT indicating a willingness to talk about those topics.
And that's the person I was having conversations with. So that's why I was shocked when you gave me the news of your conversations. But, in bureaucracies, I think you have many parts, and different attitudes. So
Yeah.
I think that having that many people at the table
Will be interesting.
Will be interesting, yeah.
Yeah, and then it'll also be open to the public, and I do anticipate, or I think we should anticipate that folks will want to come and talk about certain areas that concern them. And so I think with that in mind, so I'm going to try to have another conversation with this gentleman this upcoming week to kind of button up the agenda and kind of help ensure that it sort of flows. And I think the opening conversation they want to have is about their project on
Route 94.
Route 94.
And Oscar Olarte will be part of the
Oh, he is.
the group, so that's great. And I just want to say, Barry and I have had very good rapport with Oscar and his design team. We got hold of them early on and, started injecting, the ideas of, safer crosswalks and the changes at the intersection of Colonial and Route 94, Maple. So they've been very attentive and very positive. And so I know having them at the table will be a good thing. And I think that is a good springboard, but it doesn't stand alone. This road connects with all the other roads. And that's what has to be understood. And I think that we'll get some of what we want, maybe not all, but we'll find out.
Yeah, and so what I was thinking was it could make sense that if members of the board could maybe, if there are specific things that you would like to make sure on the agenda, then if you could send them to me,
Mhm,
and And then I'm gonna try to have another conversation on Wednesday, just to make sure that it's all, clear. And I would really love, I think one of the goals I have is that they would do some kind of presenting, that they wouldn't just sit there and listen, that they would talk with us about, best practices, and that we would be able to get some, technical support or,
Did they give any indication on creating new sidewalks to the end of Maple Avenue or to the end of the village border?
the,
I know they talk about repairing some of them and making them ADA accessible.
Well,
Did they
on-
talk about any new ones?
No, not really. On Oakland Avenue, they pre-exist, so
Right.
they'll make sidewalk improvements. But I don't think they will create new sidewalks where there are no sidewalks.
but I think that's something that we should maybe talk to them about, because
Yeah,
when
there are
these
entire neighborhoods that would connect to.
right, and when these, like we talked about earlier, when a lot of these neighborhoods were developed, everything was very vehicle centric, and the needs of the community have changed, and there's all of these, there's obviously a big push by the administration to improve walkability and mobility, and so maybe there's a way for us to lean into that, and I don't think it's unreasonable for us to expect that kind of support. So.
Very good.
Okay, so, and again, the date on the meeting is?
The 17th.
The 17th.
On the,
So how
Thursday.
soon do you want any suggestions on the agenda?
I think it would be great to get them before Wednesday, because then that gives us a week to make sure that we can be really clear about anything that we need them to do in advance of the meeting. So I had sent them a map of the gateways, and I know you had indicated to them roadways that you were hoping to talk about. But I think it does make sense to limit the conversation to, at least this first conversation, to the state-owned roads, but with the hope that there might be some technical support available.
Well, I think your conversation, again, what is his name? I forget.
Michael Zamierowski?
Right. With Michael will illuminate how far they will.
Yeah, because I already
Expand.
I got a hard no, but this doesn't look like a hard no, so.
No, and that was, that was the sense I got, that they were
Yeah.
really eager to help, so.
Who are all the 9 people? Do they all have different expertises, or is he bringing the whole office, or?
Yeah, it sounds like they're coming from different areas of focus. So maybe that's something else that I can talk with him about to get a better understanding of.
Yeah, if they could send us even some bio information, just to get a sense of what departments people are in,
Yeah.
So we're just not kind of,
I wonder if this is just an unusual request for them, that they don't get a lot of this, but
I think it is, yeah.
yeah, I think as a state agency focused in transportation, that it should be expected.
Right.
And Barry, correct me if I'm wrong, but the county agency is, they're not really looking at traffic safety per se, aren't they looking at funding and things of that nature? Isn't that more what they?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, but they're who you have to go through if you want to get funds to make project improvements.
But they're not engineers, they're not, they're not.
No, it's
They won't
made
help
up of
design a
elected
program?
officials, pretty much, yeah, no.
Right, okay. Anyone else? I just want to do a shout out, thank you to the Warwick Valley Gardeners and to the steering committee from Warwick Playground Dreams and some people that just showed up who helped plant 2,000 narcissus bulbs around the 9/11 monument in Stanley Deming Park. And many hands make light work, so it was done in an hour, less than an hour, which was pretty incredible, on a very wet but warm day. And so I just want to say thank you to all the volunteers that helped us out. And it'll be beautiful. Visit it in the spring. It will be, I think, spectacular. We do have to go into executive session.
Actually, may I make
yes.
one announcement?
Yes.
So Sustainable Warwick has alerted me that on November 15th, 2022, at the library, from 6 to 7 p.m., there will be a moderated, Sustainable Warwick moderated session about a video series called Project Drawdown. Project Drawdown has compiled the world's most comprehensive plan for addressing climate issues and reaching drawdown, the point in the future when levels of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere stop climbing and start to steadily decline. So there is a discussion. So for those who would like to be more informed about this or participate in this discussion, this could be a very good opportunity. Again, November 15th, it's a Tuesday from 6 to 7 p.m. Sustainable Warwick does have this information on their website, but I think there is an expectation of watching several videos that you can see for free online up to this one particular one. But I just wanted to put that out there in case anyone's interested.
Great, thank you.
Should add that to the Hello Warwick Valley calendar too.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so, let me see that. So, do you want to make the motion? The bottom one, yeah.
Make a motion, we go into executive session to discuss proposed acquisition, sale, or lease of real property, or the proposed acquisition of securities or sale of, exchange, or securities held by such public body, but only when publicity would substantially affect the value thereof.
Oh, and also, this as part of the motion, and also the medical.
And also the medical, financial, credit, or employment history of a particular person or corporation or matters leading to the appointment, employment, promotion, demotion, discipline, suspension, dismissal, or removal of a particular person or corporation.
Okay.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And so, when we come back, we will be closing our meeting. We'll not take any further action, or there'll be no other motions. So it will just be the closing of the meeting. Okay.
I'm gonna run.
And do we need to sign
Yes.
those, Jen?
Oh, yeah, we have to sign this before anything, yeah.
Trustee of American Sign.
Oh, thank you.
Oh yeah, can I take a picture
Where am I
of that?
doing this?
The events.
Oh, yeah,
Over here?
sure.
So we can add them, although Mary probably already added them.
She may have.
Part of our.
Yeah, she may have.
Yeah.
What am I signing?
That's the
I wanted
unpaid
to see
taxes.
the one about the veterans.
Signing my house over to Bill?
No, you're signing your new house over.
You can
there.
keep it.
Are you sure?
Yeah, yeah.
You got a big garden now.
Thank you for coming.
You gotta cut some of those trees down, you're gonna be raking